Hello, and welcome to Ancestral History for Sleep. Settle in, adjust your pillows until you find that perfect center of gravity. Let the noise of the modern world fade away. Tonight, we are leaving the 21st century behind. We are untethering ourselves from the relentless pace of the present and traveling back through the long, winding corridors of time. We are going to a forgotten world perched on the edge of the great desert, a realm where stone, sand, and shadow dance together under the watchful, eternal eye of the moon. As always, please take a moment to like and subscribe to our channel, Ancestral History for Sleep, if you enjoy this immersive exploration. Our community is growing, and I am curious to know where in the world and at what time you are joining me tonight. Are you watching the rain fall in a busy, neon-lit city? Or are you listening from the deep, ancestral quiet of the countryside? I would love to hear from you in the comments. Your presence here is a vital thread in the tapestry we are weaving. Close your eyes. Imagine you are standing on the high, limestone ramparts of the Citadel of Cairo. It is the middle of the 14th century, the absolute zenith of an era that defied the very laws of social gravity. The air up here is cool and thin, a sharp contrast to the stifling golden heat of the Egyptian day. It carries a complex layered bouquet, the faint metallic scent of the Nile, the ancient heavy dust of the Sahara, and the sweet lingering musk of night-blooming jasmine from the hidden palace gardens below. Beneath your feet, the stones are cold, smoothed by the measured tread of 1,000 sentries who stood where you stand now. From this height, the city of Cairo sprawls like a sleeping giant, an ocean of limestone and torchlight that stretches toward the horizon until it meets the absolute, crushing black of the desert. To the west, the Nile flows silently, a silver ribbon reflecting the stars like a curved scimitar of light. To the east, the rugged spines of the Mokattam Hills rise behind you, looking like the jagged back of a prehistoric beast, silent, watchful, and indifferent to the passing of kings. This is the Mamluk Sultanate. It is a world where the atmosphere is palpable, thick with the scent of eastern spices arriving from the Red Sea, the dry, scholarly smell of sun-bleached parchment in the madrasas, and the sharp, electric ozone that precedes a desert storm. You are not just a listener tonight. You are a traveler, a ghost in the streets of one of the largest and wealthiest cities the world has ever known. You hear the distant metallic clank of the night watch's armor, the soft rustle of heavy silk robes against stone, and the rhythmic, hypnotic lapping of the river against the mud-brick docks far below. Looking down from the citadel, you see the sacred way, the great thoroughfare of Al-Muizz, cutting through the heart of the city like a grand artery. Even at this hour, the red glow of oil lanterns flickers on meticulous geometric stonework, casting long, enigmatic shadows across the facades of mosques and mausoleums. These buildings are not mere structures. They are testaments in stone, declarations of a stratosphere of power that ruled the medieval Middle East with an iron fist and an artist's eye. This was a thalassocracy of the land and the river, a regime that controlled the world's wealth from a throne of limestone. Now, let the present moment slip further away. Let the boundaries of your room fade until you are truly there, standing on that high wall, feeling the desert wind tug at your clothes. We have a long story ahead, a narrative full of wonders hidden in the sands and the intricate mathematical carvings of the stones. Imagine you are descending from the citadel now, moving down the steep, winding path that leads into the heart of the city. The path is narrow, hemmed in by massive walls that have seen the unraveling of dynasties. As you walk, the sounds of the Maidan, the great stadium below the walls, reach your ears. Even in the darkness, the dust of the stadium seems to hang in the air, a ghost of the afternoon's Furusiyya exercises. You can almost hear the thunder of hooves and the clash of lances where the Mamluk elite practiced their horse mastery, a martial tradition that was the very backbone of their empire. The Mamluks were more than just warriors. They were the masters of a thalassocracy, of the river and the desert. While they did not rule the open oceans, they commanded the flow of the world's wealth through the Red Sea and the Nile. Every grain of pepper from India, every bolt of silk from China, and every ounce of gold from the African interior had to pass through their hands. Standing here, you are at the center of the world's web, the point where East meets West in a flurry of trade and tradition. As you reach the level of the city, the sacred way opens up before you. The architecture here is a language of brilliant color, even in the moonlight. You pass the great complex of Sultan Qalawun, its facade a cliff of meticulous Ablaq masonry, the alternating rows of black and white stone that make the walls seem to vibrate with a rhythmic, optical energy. You stop to marvel at the intricate bronze grille windows of a madrasa, where the vibrant frescoes and carved wooden ceilings are lit by the low, honeyed glow of a single hanging lamp. You see a group of pilgrims resting in the shadow of a minaret. They have come from the corners of the earth, from the Sahel, from the Anatolian highlands, from the islands of the east, moving with the measured tread of a religious pilgrimage toward the holy cities of Mecca and Medina. To them, Cairo is the gateway to the divine, a city of 1,000 minarets that pierce the stratosphere like prayers made solid. They carry with them the ancestral weight of their people, seeking solace in the shadow of these great monuments. As you stand in the silence of the night, you begin to realize that this world, for all its grandeur, was built on a paradox. These men who built these towering monuments, who commanded the thalassocracy of trade, and who guarded the sacred way, were men who began their lives in chains. The term Mamluk itself stems from the Arabic meaning, one who is owned. The Sultan himself, sitting on his throne of ivory and ebony, was once a child sold in a market on the Black Sea. This unraveling of the traditional social order, where the slave became the master, is the central, enigmatic mystery of our story. It is a story of how the dispossessed inherited the earth and shaped it into a masterpiece of stone and spirit. This history is a mirror that forces us to consider the sustainability of our own world. As we look at the ruins of their palaces and the enduring, defiant beauty of their mosques, we are invited to reflect on the unforeseen consequences of our own choices. Their story is a meditation on resilience, on the ponos, the sacred suffering and labor of the common people, and on the inevitable unraveling of even the most powerful empires. Imagine you are now in the labyrinthine heart of medieval Cairo, specifically in the flickering, amber-lit corners of the city's ancient bazaars. You find your place near the towering, soot-stained stones of the Bab Zuwayla Gate, the massive, twin-towered entrance to the city that has witnessed centuries of triumph and execution. The atmosphere here is palpable, thick with the heavy, sweet scent of fruit-scented tobacco drifting from water pipes and the dark, earthy aroma of roasting coffee beans being crushed by hand. In a corner sits an old Hakawati, a traditional storyteller whose voice is a low, hypnotic rumble, a rhythmic cadence that seems to sync with the very heartbeat of the city. He is recounting the legendary deeds of Sultan Baybars, the man known as the Lion of Egypt. In the mythic stratosphere of the Hakawati's tale, Baybars is a titan, a supernatural force sent by the divine to guard the sacred way of the faithful. The storyteller speaks of how Baybars could swim the mighty Nile in full, heavy iron armor, cutting through the currents as easily as a fish. The legends say his horse, a beast of celestial pedigree, could gallop across the scorching rugged spines of the desert for 3 days and nights without a single drop of water. It is whispered that Baybar's eyes possessed an enigmatic quality, capable of seeing through the absolute ink-black dark of a moonless night. In this oral tradition, he is the savior who broke the back of the unstoppable Mongol horde and drove the last of the crusaders into the foaming turquoise waters of the Mediterranean. To the listeners in the bazaar, the Mamluk is a man of iron will and divine protection, a hero whose life is a testament to the power of faith and the sword. However, the detectives of history, the meticulous archaeologists who sift through the silver-grey dust of the citadel, and the historians who pore over the ink-stained, fragile scrolls of chroniclers, have unraveled a truth that is far more complex than human. The reality of the Mamluk saga is even more staggering than the legend. To understand this, imagine yourself as a young boy in the 13th century, far from the sun-drenched stones of Cairo. You are standing amidst the vast, wind-swept steppes of Central Asia, a Kipchak Turk or a Circassian living a life of nomadic freedom. Suddenly, that freedom is violently unraveled. In a flash of steel and the thunder of raiding hooves, you are captured. You are stripped of your name and family, becoming raw material, a commodity to be traded along the long, meticulous routes of the slave trade. Because Islamic law forbids the owning of Muslim slaves, young Mamluks were imported from Christian territories. You are marched across the earth, inspected like a thoroughbred animal at the markets of the Black Sea, purchased by the Sultan's agents, and loaded onto a ship crossing toward Egypt. Upon arrival in Cairo, you are taken to the barracks of Rhoda Island, a fortress-like sanctuary designed to isolate you and forge you into something new. Here, the meticulous reality begins. It is a life defined by ponos, the sacred suffering of labor and discipline. You are converted to Islam and taught Arabic, but your primary education is in the crucible of Furusiya, the elite martial arts of the cavalryman. Imagine the dust of the stadium rising around you as you spend 12 hours a day in the saddle. You learn to shoot a composite bow with such meticulous precision that you can hit a target while your horse is at a full gallop. You learn the measured tread of the phalanx and the brutal grace of the curved sword. This was a meritocracy of the sword in its most absolute form. In the Mamluk stratosphere, you were not born into power. Your only family was your Kushta Shia, your fellow recruits who suffered and trained alongside you. This bond was thicker than blood, an enigmatic brotherhood of shared trauma and shared glory. It was this bond that allowed them to eventually seize the throne of Egypt for themselves in 1250, officially establishing the Mamluk Sultanate, when a Mamluk commander named Aybak claimed the crown. The myth may say they were born of lions, but the meticulous reality found in the stones tells a different story. They were boys forged in the fire of slavery, tempered by the ponos of the barracks, and polished by the language of brilliant color in the courts. They became a stratosphere of elite warriors who turned their chains into crowns. The unraveling of the myth only makes the reality more breathtaking, a testament to the ancestral resilience of the human spirit. To understand the Mamluk Sultanate, you must first understand their meticulous obsession with stone. For these rulers, limestone was not merely a building material, it was a canvas for immortality, a medium through which a class of former slaves could write their names into the ancestral record of the earth. It is midnight in the year 1350, during the absolute zenith of an era that served as the unrivaled crossroads of the known world. The city of Cairo is a sprawling, self-contained universe, a labyrinthine metropolis where every dome and soaring minaret serves as a testament to the Sultan's piety and his absolute grip on power. This architectural stratosphere still makes up much of the fabric of historic Cairo today, standing as a testament to an era of unparalleled patronage. You are walking now down Wiz Street, the ceremonial spine of the city known as the Al-Shari al-Azam, or the Sacred Way. In the 14th century, this was the path trodden by kings, caliphs, and commoners alike. On either side of you, the buildings rise like cliffs of ivory-colored limestone, their sheer verticality creating a canyon of enigmatic shadows. This is the anatomy of the world as the Mamluks saw it, a landscape where architecture was the most significant form of patronage. The Mamluks were status-conscious patrons, and their buildings were often marked with emblems of their ownership to declare their rise through the ranks by their own meticulous efforts. The Mamluks developed a unique architectural style characterized by the construction of multifunctional buildings. Because space in the city was limited, their floor plans became increasingly creative and complex as they sought to make monuments visually dominant in their urban surroundings. While the Sultan, or a high-ranking emir, typically intended to build a mausoleum for himself, they almost always attached charitable structures such as madrasas, mosques, or public fountains called sabils. These complexes were not merely for display. They were governed by inalienable waqf agreements, which were charitable endowments that ensured the building would be maintained by revenues from land, shops, or trade routes. This system also served the secondary purpose of ensuring a form of income or property for the patron's descendants, effectively weaving family legacy into the pious fabric of the city. Look up at the Mosque Madrasa of Sultan Hassan, which is currently nearing its colossal completion. Its walls are so profoundly thick, they feel like the foundation stones of the earth itself. This structure is the largest and costliest Mamluk building in Cairo, built during a time of recurring plague epidemics that caused mass death and economic shifts. Despite the unraveling of society during the Black Death, the Mamluk elite continued to pour resources into this monumental project as a declaration of defiance against the chaos of the time. You stand before the portal, a masterpiece of muqarnas, those delicate stalactite-like carvings that cascade down from the lintel like frozen stone honey. They create a play of light and shadow, so meticulous it dizzies the mind, drawing your gaze upward toward the heavens. This portal was designed to make you feel small, reminding you that you are entering a stratosphere of divine and imperial authority. The interior of such a complex typically opens into a vast courtyard with 4 massive iwans, or vaulted halls. In many Mamluk madrasas, these halls represented the 4 schools of Islamic law, providing a physical space for the meticulous study of religious sciences. The height of these vaults is so great that they seem to capture the very sky, while the fountain for ablutions in the center sits in a pool of silence, its water reflecting the stars above. Imagine the ponos, the grinding toil of the 1,000 artisans who spent years carving these geometric wonders, their chisels singing against the limestone in a rhythmic labor of love and obligation. As you move deeper into the city's core, you notice that the Mamluks were the undisputed masters of ablak masonry. Look closely at the facades of the buildings passing by. You see the rhythmic use of alternating rows of light and dark stone, often creamy limestone paired with deep basalt or reddish desert stone. In the cool, silver moonlight, these buildings seem to vibrate with a rhythmic, optical energy, a language of brilliant color expressed through the raw earth itself. Ablak was the signature of the Mamluk style, a visual testament to their ability to harmonize the disparate elements of their world into a single, unified aesthetic. The stripes move across the walls like the heartbeat of the city, creating a sense of motion even in the stillness of midnight. Imagine standing now before the Maristan or hospital of Sultan Qalawun. Qalawun was a prolific patron whose building activities shifted from personal purposes to large, multi-division hospital complexes. Even at midnight, it is a sanctuary of profound healing and ancestral care. You step through the threshold into a large courtyard where the air is noticeably cooler, scented with the enigmatic aroma of rosewater and medicinal herbs. You hear the soothing, rhythmic splash of fountains, designed meticulously to cool the air and calm the spirits of those suffering from illness. In the Mamluk stratosphere, healthcare was a civic right, and the sick were often treated regardless of their wealth or status. This architecture was profoundly functional, a testament to a society that sought to manage a crowded, bustling city with grace and compassion. Adjacent to the hospital stands Kalawun's mausoleum, an interior forest of marble and mother of pearl, where the Sultan rests in a silence that is almost holy. The Mamluks were also masters of a thalassocracy of the land and the river. From the citadel, they oversaw the flow of the Nile, the great sacred way of water that served as the lifeblood of the empire. It was the Nile that allowed this stone forest to bloom in the heart of the desert. To support the stratosphere of the city, the Mamluks built massive, meticulous aqueducts that carried river water for miles to reach the high citadel. They also fortified Mediterranean ports like Alexandria, turning them into guardians of the trade routes that brought the scent of eastern spices to the tables of Cairo. They were rulers of the sea lanes and river currents, ensuring that the wealth of the Indian Ocean and the Mediterranean converged in their markets. The geography of Cairo was a direct extension of the Mamluk military mind. As you walk through the labyrinthine side streets, you realize that every street was defensible, every gate was a fortress, and every minaret doubled as a watchtower. The city was designed to swallow an invading army whole, a testament to the security they maintained. You pass through the shadows of a Sabil Kutab, a combined public fountain and elementary school. These small, enigmatic structures, with their beautiful bronze grills and wooden eaves, provided water to the public and education to orphans. They were the unseen threads that wove the community together, a testament to the Mamluk belief that power must be tempered by charity. You find yourself now at Bain al-Qasrain, the area between the two palaces. Once the site of Grand Fatimid palaces, it was transformed by the Mamluks into a dense stratosphere of monumental architecture. Here, the unraveling of history is visible in the stones themselves. You see the mausoleums of past sultans, their domes covered in meticulous stone carvings of arabesque patterns and geometric stars. These domes were not mere roofs. They were mirrors of the heavens, representing the celestial stratosphere to which the soul of the Sultan aspired. The tantalizing silence of these tombs is broken only by the wind whistling through the rugged spines of the Mokattam Hills. The Mamluks possessed a meticulous understanding of urban density. In Cairo, space was the ultimate luxury. Buildings were often tall and narrow, leaning toward each other across the street, like enigmatic elders sharing secrets. This verticality created a stratosphere of rooftops where the people of Cairo would sleep on hot summer nights, seeking the cool ancestral breeze of the desert. The city was a testament to human ingenuity, where the ponos of construction was matched by the vibrant frescoes of artistic expression. You see the mashrabiya windows, those intricate wooden lattices that allow the night breeze to enter while keeping the gaze of the stranger out. They are the tantalizing silence of the domestic world, a barrier between the street and the private lives of the inhabitants. Through these lattices, the language of brilliant color from interior lamps spills out onto the cobbles, a soft reminder of the life that pulses behind the stone. These wooden screens cast dappled, geometric shadows across interior floors, a testament to a culture that valued both openness to the divine and the protection of the private self. Now, we ascend once more to the citadel, the stone guardian of Cairo. As you leave the labyrinthine noise of the lower city, the path steepens, winding upward toward the rugged spines of the Mokattam Hills. The air here begins to change. It grows sharper, thinner, and carries the scent of sun-baked granite and wood smoke from the nearby barracks. You pass through the heavy, iron-studded gates, the Bab al-Mudarraj, under the watchful gaze of the silent sentries. Their armor, polished to a mirror sheen, catches the moonlight, a cold testament to the stratocracy that lives within these walls. You are moving now into the very heart of the Mamluk stratosphere. You enter the great Iwan, the Iwan al-Kabir, the Sultan's grand audience hall, where the transition is palpable. The cavernous space stretches upward into a massive dome, supported by monolithic granite columns, some of which were meticulous repurposed spolia from the ancestral temples of Upper Egypt. The air here feels heavy, thick with the weight of absolute authority and the constant, underlying hum of political intrigue that vibrates through the corridors like a low-frequency pulse. It is a space designed for the spectacle of the Sultan, where the unraveling of a man's destiny could happen between two breaths. The Mamluk political system was a warrior oligarchy, unlike any other in the medieval world. Here, the Sultan was not a divine king by birthright. He was the first among equals. He sat upon a throne of ivory and ebony, draped in heavy silks, but his crown was never steady. Surround him in your mind with his emirs, the generals, governors, and lords of the realm, who were once, like him, children sold in the distant markets of the Black Sea. This was a stratosphere of power, defined by a meticulous paradox, a society where a man could rise from the dust of the stadium to the height of a sovereign, but where the unraveling of his rule was a constant, enigmatic threat whispered in the shadows of the court. Governance in this world was a meticulous and exhausting balancing act. The Sultan was the sovereign of the two seas and the two rivers, yet he had to satisfy the palpable greed and ambition of his emirs to ensure his own survival. To rule effectively, he had to navigate the labyrinthine rivalries of the different Mamluk houses. You see the emirs standing in their ranks, the emirs of 100, the emirs of 40, and the emirs of 10. Their status was marked by the language of brilliant color in their dress, the yellow silk robes of the Sultan's favorites, the intricate, meticulous embroidery of their sashes, and the heavy gold chains that served as both treasure and testament to their rank. To provide a sacred way of religious legitimacy to this military rule, the Mamluks maintained a shadow caliph in Cairo. This caliph was a descendant of the Abbasids of Baghdad, who had escaped the Mongol unraveling of their own capital in 1258. The Sultan would bow before the caliph in a public display of meticulous humility, a testament to his role as the defender of the faith. Yet, everyone in the great Iwan knew where the true power lay. It resided in the hands that held the sword, in the measured tread of the cavalry, and in the thalassocracy of the trade routes that the army protected. The caliph was a spiritual anchor, providing religious figurehead legitimacy, but the Sultan was the iron mast of the state. You witness the spectacle of the Sultan during the Friday procession as he descends from the citadel to the mosque. This was theatre on a stratospheric scale. He rides a magnificent white stallion, its harness caparisoned in gold and studded with enigmatic emeralds. Above his head, a high-ranking official holds a yellow silk parasol, the mizala, to shield the sovereign from the sun, topped with a golden bird. This was not merely for comfort. It was a testament to his unique status, a visual mirror of his authority. The merchant oligarchies and the common people lined the streets, watching the measured tread of the royal Mamluks, their eyes fixed on the display of vibrant frescoes and meticulous order. It was designed to convince the world that the state was an unshakable monolith, even as the unraveling of internal factions simmered just beneath the surface. Behind the scenes, however, the Sultan's power was often curtailed by the principle of Kushdashia, the foster bond of the barracks. This was the ancestral glue of the Mamluk system, a common bond between Mamluks belonging to the household of a single master. If a ruler became too tyrannical, if he neglected the sacred way of their shared traditions, or if he became too weak to protect the thalassocracy of their commerce, his brothers in arms would not hesitate to initiate an unraveling of his reign. It was a meritocracy of the sword that was both brutal and efficient. The Sultan was always aware that his throne was a testament to his peers' consent, and that consent could be withdrawn in a single night of daggers and whispers. The administration was equally meticulous. The stratosphere of power required a vast bureaucracy of civilian officials, the men of the pen, who managed the unraveling complexities of land taxes, trade duties, and religious endowments. These officials, often Egyptian or Syrian scholars, worked in the shadow of the men of the sword, creating a labyrinthine network of paper and ink that mirrored the stone network of the city. They ensured that the ponos of the peasants in the fields was translated into the gold that funded the vibrant frescoes of the palaces and the measured tread of the armies. In the Sultan's court, the ceremonial culture was a language of brilliant color used to communicate rank and favor. Treasures of meticulous craftsmanship, such as inlaid metalwork, fine porcelains from the East, and enigmatic silks, were distributed as gifts to ensure loyalty. The Sultan acted as an overseer of the thalassocracy, personally inspecting the ports and the rugged spines of the frontier fortresses. His life was a testament to the measured tread of duty, a constant movement between the sacred way of the mosque, the dust of the stadium, and the stratosphere of the council chamber. As you stand in the great Iwan, listening to the hushed whispers of the courtiers, you feel the palpable tension between the unraveling of old loyalties and the forging of new ones. Lesser-ranked emirs viewed the Sultan as a peer entrusted with ultimate authority only as long as he guaranteed their salaries and monopoly on military power. When the Sultan failed to ensure these benefits, disruptive riots or coup plots were a likely scenario. The Mamluk state was a mirror of the military minds that created it. It was fortified, hierarchical, and deeply suspicious of hereditary weakness. This was a system that thrived on the meticulous selection of the strong, a testament to the belief that power must be earned through ponos and maintained through furusia. The measured tread of the Mamluk knight continues. Even here, at the peak of the stratosphere, the sacred way of Islamic law provided a framework that no sultan could entirely ignore. The men of the pen and the men of the sword existed in a meticulous symbiosis. The scholars provided the moral testament for the sultan's rule, while the sultan provided the thalassocracy and security that allowed the scholars to pursue their enigmatic studies. It was a world of vibrant frescoes and tantalizing silence, where the roar of the stadium was balanced by the quiet scratch of the scribe's reed. The Sultan's responsibilities were vast, issuing legal orders, deciding to go to war, levying taxes for military campaigns, and ensuring food supplies were distributed proportionately throughout the empire. The Sultan or his appointees also led the Hajj caravans to Mecca, acting as Amir al-Hajj, or commander of the caravan. Starting with Sultan Qalawun, the rulers even monopolized the provision of the Kiswa, the sacred mantle draped annually over the Kaaba. These religious duties were essential to addressing the problem of legitimacy that naturally arose for a sultanate ruled by former slaves. As the moonlight fades and the first hints of dawn touch the rugged spines of the Mokattam Hills, the spectacle of the Sultan remains etched in your mind. You have seen the anatomy of the world through the eyes of the elite. You have felt the palpable weight of the ivory throne and the measured tread of the emirs. But as the sun rises, it will illuminate more than just the stratosphere of the citadel. It will shine on the labyrinthine streets below, on the ponos of the common folk, and on the sacred way that connects the palace to the field. The unraveling of the Sultanate is still centuries away, but the seeds of its transformation are already present in the enigmatic rivalries of the barracks. For now, the Mamluks are the masters of the thalassocracy, the guardians of the sacred way, and the builders of a stone stratosphere that seems eternal. But as we descend from the heights of governance, we must remember that an empire is more than its kings. It is the sum of the ponos of all its people. Stay with me as the light changes. We have seen how the few ruled the many, but to truly understand this ancestral history, We must walk where the many lived. We must feel the dust of the stadium on our own skin and hear the rhythmic breathing of the city at work. Our journey through the sacred way is about to take us from the gilded stratosphere of power into the monotonous grinding toil and the sacred suffering of the everyday. Settle back into the quiet. The whispers of the great Iwan are fading, replaced by the early morning calls of the city below. The measured tread of our story moves onward, softly, into the ponos of the common folk. Let us leave the gilded halls of the Citadel, where the air is thin and the whispers of power are sharp, and descend back into the thick, warm dust of the stadium and the winding alleys below. To truly understand the Mamluk world, we must move beyond the stratosphere of the elite and look at the monotonous grinding toil, the ponos, or sacred suffering, of the common folk who carried the weight of this empire on their backs. While the sultans were the architects of the state, the farmers, artisans, and merchants were its lifeblood, existing in a world that was as palpable and sensory as it was demanding. Imagine yourself now transported to the green, silty expanses of the Nile Delta. You are a peasant, a fellah, your skin darkened and toughened by the relentless Egyptian sun. Your life is not governed by the daggers of the court, but by the measured tread of the Nile's seasons, the flood, the sowing, and the harvest. You wake long before the sun crests the Mokattam Hills, the air still cool and damp with the scent of river mud and crushed reeds. The silence of the dawn is broken by the rhythmic, groaning wooden song of the shaduf, the ancient lever used to lift water from the river's veins to your parched fields. Or perhaps you work the sakia, the great water wheel turned by blindfolded oxen, their hooves creating a steady, measured tread in the mud. The work is back-breaking and repetitive. It is a testament to human endurance that has not changed in 3,000 years. You grow wheat, barley, and flax, but you know that much of this sacred suffering is for another's benefit. Most of your harvest will be meticulously collected by the Sultan's tax agents or the overseers of the Iqta, the land grants given to Mamluk emirs to fund their horses, their armor, and the monumental stone complexes of the city. Your labor is the invisible foundation of the stratosphere above. As the sun climbs higher, the heat becomes palpable, a physical weight on your shoulders. You stop for a moment to eat, perhaps a simple meal of flatbread, onions, and salted fish, the same ancestral diet that sustained the builders of the pyramids. In this moment of rest, you feel the tantalizing silence of your own history. You do not write chronicles, and you do not carve your name in limestone. Your legacy is in the irrigation canals you dig and the measured tread of the life you sustain. Now, let us shift our gaze from the fields to the labyrinthine heart of Cairo. If you are not a man of the field, perhaps you are an artisan in the city's bustling souks. Imagine yourself as a baker, rising in the middle of the night in a hot, cramped cellar. The air is thick with the scent of fresh bread, a comforting aroma that battles the enigmatic smells of the street, sewage, donkey dung, and the scent of eastern spices. You knead the dough by the flickering light of an oil lamp, your movements meticulous and practiced. As dawn breaks, the city erupts in a language of brilliant color and sound. You hear the clink of the coppersmiths hammering out basins, the rhythmic thud of the weavers' looms, and the shouting of water sellers. If you are a weaver, you might spend 18 hours a day hunched over a loom, your fingers flying to produce the fine tiraz silks and intricate textiles that the Mamluk emirs wear to signal their status. This is the ponos of the city, a grinding, relentless toil that transforms raw wool and silk into the vibrant frescoes of the court. You navigate the city quarters, which are divided by trade and ancestral heritage. You might live in Arab, a multi-story apartment complex where families are packed tightly together, sharing the palpable noise of life. For the commoner, The city is a labyrinthine maze of social obligations and economic necessity. You are under the constant gaze of the mutasib, the market inspector, who ensures that your bread is the correct weight and your spices are not adulterated. The unraveling of your livelihood can happen with a single failed inspection or a sudden rise in the price of grain. Yet, life was not merely a monotonous grinding toil. It was punctuated by moments of vibrant communal joy and spiritual relief. Imagine the sun setting, casting long, enigmatic shadows over the mosque of Ibn Tulun. You join a crowd in a dusty square to watch the Khayal al-Zil, the shadow play. In the flickering light behind a translucent linen screen, leather puppets move with meticulous grace. These are not stories of sultans, but of the people. You see characters like the wise fool or the corrupt judge, acting out bawdy comedies and epic battles. As you watch, the air is filled with laughter and the scent of roasting meat from nearby street stalls. It is here, in the shadow of the screen, that the common person can safely laugh at the stratosphere of the elite. The shadow play is a testament to the wit and resilience of the Cairene spirit, a way to process the ponos of the day through the language of brilliant color and satire. You might also find solace in the hammam, the public bathhouse. Step inside, leaving the dust of the stadium behind. The air is palpable with steam and the scent of soap and eucalyptus. Under the meticulous geometric domes, light filters through colored glass bullseyes, casting vibrant frescoes of blue and green on the marble floors. In the silence of the steam room, the social hierarchies of the city begin to unravel. Here, the porter and the merchant sit side by side in a measured tread of relaxation. It is a sacred way of purification, a moment where the ponos of the body is washed away and the soul finds a brief stratosphere of peace. The rhythmic breathing of the bathhouse is the heartbeat of the city's social life, a place of gossip, business, and quiet reflection. Faith, too, provided a structure to the unraveling chaos of daily life. The five-fold measured tread of the call to prayer was a constant anchor. Whether you were in the middle of a transaction in the SUQ or tilling a field in the Delta, the voice of the muezzin reached out to you, a testament to a higher order. You might participate in a Maulid, a festival celebrating the birth of a saint, where the streets are filled with vibrant frescoes of light, music, and the distribution of halwa sweets. These festivals were the unseen threads that wove the ancestral memory of the community together, providing a stratosphere of hope in a world of hardship. There is, however, a tantalizing silence that hangs over the history of these people. While the Mamluk sultans left behind meticulous stone inscriptions and grand chronicles that detail every hunt and every court intrigue, the common folk left only the tools of their trade and the humble remains of their homes. We find their stories in the unraveling fragments of documents or the archaeological remains of their pottery. Their lives were a testament to a resilience that did not need stone to endure. They were the detectives of history in their own right, adapting to the unforeseen consequences of their own choices and the shifts of the Nile. As you stand in the labyrinthine streets of the night, you realize that the Sultanate was a mirror. The stratosphere of the elite was only possible because of the ponos of the masses. The vibrant frescoes of the palaces were paid for by the measured tread of the oxen in the Delta. This was the anatomy of the world, a symbiotic, if unequal, relationship between the men of the sword and the men of the soil. The unraveling of the day's labor is complete. The baker's oven is cooling and the weaver's loom is still. The measured tread of the night watchman is the only sound in the labyrinthine alley. As you settle deeper into your own rest, remember the sacred suffering and the vibrant joy of the ancestors. Their lives were not a footnote. They were the testament that kept the heart of the Sultanate beating, even when the stratosphere above was in turmoil. The air is quiet now, carrying only the enigmatic whisper of the desert wind. Despite the relentless military nature of the state, and the monotonous grinding toil that defined the lives of many, the Mamluk era was far from a cultural desert. In fact, it was a language of brilliant color and exquisite refinement that bloomed in the most unexpected places. Let us pause in our journey through the labyrinthine streets and retreat into the deep, palpable quiet of a sultan's library within the citadel. It is late, and the only sound is the rhythmic, hypnotic scratch of a reed pen, a kalam, moving across thick, starch-polished paper. The air here is cool and still, scented with the dry, enigmatic aroma of old parchment, lamp-black ink, and the faint musk of leather bindings. The Mamluks, those former slaves who clawed their way into the stratosphere of power, were perhaps the world's greatest patrons of the book. In this silence, you see a master calligrapher hunched over a desk, his movements meticulous and deliberate. He is working on a copy of the Quran produced for the Sultan. To look upon these pages is to witness a testament to human devotion. The paper is not the flimsy material of the modern age. It is heavy, cream-colored, and burnished until it shines like ivory. The illumination is a vibrant fresco of gold leaf and lapis lazuli, the deep blue pigment brought from the rugged spines of distant Afghan mountains. The calligraphy is often in Thuluth, a bold, majestic script that feels as architectural as the great limestone buildings you walked past earlier. The vertical strokes of the letters reach upward like the minarets of the city, while the horizontal curves flow with the measured tread of the Nile itself. There is a meticulous beauty in the way the words are balanced, a sacred geometry that mirrors the stars in the night sky. The unraveling of the divine word into visual form was, for the Mamluk elite, a way to anchor their own volatile history in the eternal. But the Mamluk aesthetic was not confined to the library. It extended to every object of daily and ceremonial life, transforming the dust of the stadium into objects of enigmatic grace. Look at a Mamluk glass mosque lamp, designed to hang from the high, vaulted ceilings of the great mosque complexes. This is not merely a vessel for light. It is a testament to the mastery of the glassmakers of Cairo and Aleppo. It is enameled with vibrant blues, deep reds, and shimmering golds, often depicting the verse of light from the Quran. When the oil wick is lit inside, the lamp does not just illuminate the room. It transforms the entire stratosphere of the mosque into a celestial vision. The shadows of the Muqarnas carvings dance on the walls, and the language of brilliant color on the glass creates an atmosphere that is palpable with the presence of the divine. The Mamluk emirs, who spent their days in the brutal grace of combat, sought to fill their nights with this translucent, enigmatic beauty. Consider, too, the metalwork that tells the story of the Mamluk stratosphere in silver and gold. Masterpieces like the Baptistère de Saint Louis are hammered into shape and then inlaid with such meticulous detail that it defies the eye. You can see the individual scales on the fish and the delicate veins in the leaves that decorate the rim. The surface is crowded with vibrant frescoes of the hunt and the battle, emirs in their high-collared robes, horses mid-gallop, and the enigmatic faces of warriors captured in a tantalizing silence. This metalwork was a language of status. On these basins and ewers, you see the blazons or heraldic symbols of the emirs: a cup for the cup-bearer, a sword for the sword-bearer, a pair of polo sticks for the master of the horse. These symbols were the ancestral markers of a class that often had no traditional lineage, a meticulous way of creating a lineage out of their own achievements and proximity to the Sultan. They took the dust of the stadium and the blood of the battlefield and distilled it into a testament of pure, geometric grace. As you linger in this stratosphere of art, you begin to notice the unique linguistic landscape of the Mamluk world, the unraveling of tongues that define their identity. Among themselves, the Mamluk elite spoke a variety of Kipchak Turkic or Circassian. This was the language of the steppe and the mountains, a language of command and brotherhood that separated them from their Arabic-speaking subjects. This linguistic barrier created a stratosphere of exclusivity, a tantalizing silence between the rulers and the ruled. To hear the Turkish commands barked across the Maidan was to hear the voice of the owned who had become the owners. Yet, while they guarded their ancestral tongue, they embraced Arabic as the sacred way of their faith and their administration. This dual identity is etched into the very stones of the city. You see the Sultan's name in meticulous Arabic calligraphy on the outside of a building, while inside his private quarters, he might be listening to a Turkish translation of an epic poem. This was a mirror of history, reflecting a culture that was constantly negotiating between its nomadic origins and its role as the guardian of the urban Islamic heartland. The language of brilliant color found in Mamluk art was so potent that it traveled far beyond the borders of the Sultanate. Their designs, with their meticulous geometry and vibrant frescoes of enamel and inlay, influenced the Renaissance in Italy. You can see the echoes of Mamluk glass in the workshops of Venice and the patterns of Mamluk textiles in the paintings of Italian masters. To the east, distant empires looked toward Cairo for inspiration in their own stratosphere of architectural and book arts. Look now at a Mamluk carpet, often featuring a central, star-like medallion. The colors, deep reds, forest greens, and sky blues, are a testament to the natural dyes of the era. The patterns are not chaotic. They are a meticulous grid of octagons and stars, a language of brilliant color that seems to pulsate with a measured tread. To walk upon such a carpet in a palace was to walk upon a mirror of the cosmos, a stratosphere of order in a world of political unraveling. There is a tantalizing silence in these objects, a mystery of how a group of soldiers, often portrayed as brutal, could patronize such meticulous beauty. Perhaps the art was their testament, their way of proving they were more than the raw material they started as. By surrounding themselves with vibrant frescoes and enigmatic objects, they were claiming their place in the ancestral history of the great civilizations of the Nile. They were no longer just the owned, they were the curators of a stratosphere of refinement. As the moonlight continues to wash over the library, you realize the Mamluk world was held together as much by the pen and the brush as it was by the sword and the shield. The language of brilliant color was a bridge across the unraveling factions of the state. It provided a shared sacred way of beauty that transcended the ponos of the barracks and the dust of the stadium. These objects are the ancestral voices of a people who lived at the peak of their power, a testament to the brilliance that can emerge from the shadows of history. Imagine the artisan who made the glass lamp, his lungs weary from the heat of the furnace, his eyes meticulously focused on the gold enamel. Imagine the scribe whose hand ached from the measured tread of the pen. Their ponos is what created the vibrant frescoes we admire today. They were the detectives of beauty, finding the enigmatic connections between the divine word and the material world. Their work is a mirror of the Mamluk soul, a complex, tiered stratosphere of strength and delicacy. As we prepare to leave the quiet of the library and the brilliance of the artisan's workshop, the measured tread of our narrative turns toward the horizon. For no matter how meticulous the art or how soaring the minarets, no empire is immune to the unraveling of time. The sacred way we have been walking is about to face a storm, a convergence of forces that even the strongest sultan could not hold back. The language of brilliant color is starting to dim as the night grows older, and the palpable peace of the stratosphere is threatened by unforeseen consequences. The trade routes are shifting, the plagues are returning, and the rugged spines of the mountains are no longer enough to guard the frontier. Stay with me in the tantalizing silence of this moment. Let the vibrant frescoes of the Mamluk mind linger in your thoughts. The journey is reaching its most enigmatic phase, the perfect storm of collapse. Settle deeper into the dark. The measured tread of history is moving faster now, toward the unraveling of the slave kings. The transition from the height of glory to the shadow of decline is rarely a sudden fall. It is a meticulous unraveling, a convergence of forces that gather like a summer storm on the horizon of the Sahara. As you stand once more upon the ramparts of the citadel, the air feels different. The once predictable rhythmic breathing of the city has become jagged and labored. The golden stratosphere of the mid-14th century is being replaced by a leaden, palpable sense of dread. You are witnessing the beginning of the end, the period where the Mamluk Sultanate, once the undisputed guardian of the sacred way, began to buckle under the weight of a perfect storm. The first thunderclap of this collapse was not the sound of a drum or a trumpet, but a tantalizing silence that fell over the markets. In the year 1348, a shadow moved across the Mediterranean, hitching a ride on the very merchant ships that fueled the Mamluk thalassocracy. It was the Black Death. Imagine the scene in the docks of Alexandria as a galley from the north arrives. The scent of eastern spices is suddenly overpowered by a new, enigmatic, and sickly aroma, the smell of decay. You walk through the streets of Cairo as the plague takes hold, and the vibrant frescoes of urban life are replaced by the monotonous grinding toil of the grave diggers. The death toll was staggering, a testament to the absolute vulnerability of even the most fortified empires. In the crowded quarters of the city, where you once heard the laughter of children and the calls of the water sellers, there is now only the sound of rhythmic, muffled weeping. The population was decimated, and with it, the very foundation of the Mamluk economy began to unravel. The peasants in the delta, whose ponos provided the grain for the Sultan's table, died by the thousands. The fields, once meticulously irrigated, began to return to the desert. The Iqta system, that complex political arrangement where emirs were granted land to fund their armies, collapsed as there were no longer enough hands to till the soil. This was not just a medical catastrophe. It was an existential unraveling. The Mamluks, whose power was built on the continuous import of new slave soldiers from the north, found their supply lines severed. The Black Sea regions were also reeling from the plague, and the meticulous process of training young warriors in the barracks of Rhoda Island was interrupted by the sudden, palpable presence of death. The stratosphere of the elite was not immune. Sultans and emirs fell alongside the commoners, leading to a rapid and chaotic turnover of power that left the state vulnerable to internal decay. As the plague receded, it left behind a world that was permanently altered. The survivors faced an economic landscape of ruins. To maintain their lavish lifestyle and the monumental building projects that served as a testament to their rule, the Mamluk elite turned to desperate measures. They increased the taxes on the merchant oligarchies and the remaining peasants, creating a cycle of resentment and poverty. The sacred way of commerce was becoming a gauntlet of extortion. The internal decay was mirrored in the citadel, where the enigmatic rivalries of the Burji Mamluks, the Circassian dynasty that took power in the late 14th century, grew more violent and unpredictable. Imagine the atmosphere in the council chamber now. The measured tread of the old guard has been replaced by the frantic, paranoid whispers of usurpers. Between 1382 and 1517, the Sultanate saw a dizzying array of rulers, some holding the throne for only a few months before being murdered or deposed. The social glue of Kushdashia, which had once held the Mamluks together as a brotherhood, began to dissolve into a collection of warring factions. The unraveling of political stability made it impossible to address the environmental disasters that continued to plague the land. The Nile, usually so reliable, began to fail, leading to periods of low water that brought famine and further civil unrest. While the Mamluks were fighting among themselves in the stratosphere of the citadel, the world outside their borders was undergoing a meticulous and radical transformation. To the west, The Portuguese were embarking on a journey that would forever break the Mamluk monopoly on the spice trade. Imagine you are standing on the rugged spines of the Red Sea coast, looking out at the turquoise water. For centuries, every ounce of pepper and cinnamon from the east had passed through these waters, generating the vast wealth that built the mosques of Cairo. But in 1498, Vasco da Gama rounded the Cape of Good Hope, opening a direct sea route from Europe to India. The impact was immediate and catastrophic. The Mamluk thalassocracy, built on the control of the land and the river, was bypassed by the open ocean. The scent of spices began to fade from the Egyptian markets as the Portuguese established fortresses in the Indian Ocean, intercepting the trade before it could ever reach the Red Sea. The Sultan, Kansu al-Gawri, realized the danger too late. He attempted to build a navy to challenge the Portuguese, a meticulous effort to regain control of the seas. But the Mamluks were warriors of the horse, not the mast. Their fleet was defeated in the Indian Ocean, a blow to their prestige and their treasury from which they would never recover. But the most enigmatic and final element of the perfect storm was rising in the north. The Ottoman Empire. The Ottomans were a different kind of power, a state that had embraced the future, while the Mamluks remained anchored in the ancestral traditions of the past. The central conflict was one of technology and the very philosophy of war. The Mamluks were the ultimate practitioners of Furusiya, a code of chivalry that valued the individual skill of the archer and the horseman. To them, the sword and the bow were the only honorable weapons for a warrior of the stratosphere. The Ottomans, however, had turned their gaze toward the meticulous development of gunpowder. They built massive cannons and equipped their infantry, the janissaries, with harquebuses. To the Mamluk elite, these weapons were cowardly, a violation of the sacred way of the warrior. They refused to adopt the new technology, viewing it as a tool for the commoner, not the knight. This refusal was the final, fatal thread in the unraveling of their empire. Imagine you are on the plains of Majdabik in 1516, near the city of Aleppo. The Mamluk army is arrayed in its traditional, magnificent splendor. You see the vibrant frescoes of their silk banners and the polished steel of their helmets. The Sultan himself is present, a testament to the gravity of the moment. Facing them is the Ottoman Sultan Selim I, his army a forest of smoke and iron. The battle begins, but it is not the clash of lances the Mamluks expected. It is a slaughter. The Ottoman cannons, their thunder shaking the very earth, tear through the Mamluk cavalry before they can even get within bowshot. The air becomes thick with the acrid metallic smell of gunpowder, a new and terrifying scent that marks the end of an era. The Mamluk Sultan, old and weary, falls from his horse and dies on the battlefield, not from a sword stroke, but from the sheer shock of the disaster. The unraveling was complete. The Ottoman forces marched south, and a few months later, at the Battle of Raidania, on the outskirts of Cairo, the last Mamluk resistance was broken by the same relentless wall of fire and lead. As you stand in the aftermath, the silence is palpable. The citadel, which had stood for centuries as the invincible heart of the Sultanate, was now occupied by a foreign governor. The Mamluks did not vanish entirely. They remained as a land-owning class under Ottoman rule, but their stratosphere of absolute power was gone forever. The perfect storm had passed, leaving behind a landscape of memory and stone. The transition was a mirror of history, showing how even the most meticulous and powerful systems can be undone by the unforeseen consequences of their own rigidity and the shifting tides of the world. The language of brilliant color in the Mamluk courts was silenced by the roar of Ottoman guns. The thalassocracy of the Red Sea was surrendered to the deep oceans of the West. The Ponos of the people continued, as it always does, but the masters they served were now part of a different, more distant empire. The unraveling of the Mamluk Sultanate is a testament to the fragility of greatness and the relentless pace of change. It is a story written in the dust of the stadium and the scars on the city walls. As the night deepens over the now silent ruins of the battlefield, the rugged spines of the hills remain the only constant. The stars that watched the rise of the slave kings now watch their fall. The atmospheric hook of our story has led us through the peak of glory and into the heart of the storm. We have seen the anatomy of the world and the meticulous governance of the elite, and now we have witnessed their end. But even in collapse, there is a legacy, a transformation that ensures the Mamluk spirit was never truly extinguished. Stay with me as the shadows of the storm recede. We have walked through the fire, and now we must look at what remains. The story of the Mamluks is not just one of death and defeat, but of endurance and the enigmatic ways in which the past continues to shape the present. The measured tread of our journey is moving toward the final chapters, where we will find the mirror of history waiting for us in the morning light. Imagine yourself now within the deep, hallowed silence of a sultan's private scriptorium, tucked away in a quiet wing of the citadel, where the frantic energy of the city below cannot reach. The air here is cool and still, heavy with a complex, layered bouquet of scents. The dry, earthy smell of sun-bleached parchment, the sharp, metallic tang of copper-based pigments, and the sweet, resinous aroma of cedar wood from the long cases that hold the Sultan's most precious scrolls. It is an environment of meticulous focus, a stratosphere of intellectual and artistic labor, where the only sound is the rhythmic, hypnotic scratch of the reed pen, known as the kalam, moving across the surface of starch-polished paper. You are a witness to the creation of a testament, a physical manifestation of a culture that sought to speak through the language of brilliant color and the tantalizing silence of the written word. As you stand beside the master calligrapher, you notice the absolute precision of his movements. He holds the kalam with a practiced, steady hand, his fingers stained with the enigmatic black of lamp-black ink. This is not merely the act of writing, it is a sacred geometry, a meticulous dance of ink and shadow that transforms the page into a mirror of the divine. The script he is crafting is likely Thuluth, the most majestic and architectural of the Mamluk hands. Watch as the pen descends to the paper. The vertical strokes reach upward with an almost defiant energy, mirroring the soaring minarets you passed in the sacred way, while the horizontal curves flow with the measured tread of the Nile, graceful and unstoppable. Every letter is a testament to the discipline of the Mamluk mind, a stratosphere of order where the chaotic unraveling of human emotion is subordinated to the laws of proportion and beauty. The paper itself is a marvel of craftsmanship. It is thick and resilient, made from linen rags that have been beaten, washed, and pressed with meticulous care. To prepare it for the ink, it has been treated with a paste of starch and egg whites and then burnished with a smooth agate stone until the surface shines with a soft ivory glow. This burnishing ensures that the ink does not bleed into the fibers, allowing for the razor-sharp clarity that defines the Mamluk aesthetic. As the calligrapher finishes a line, you see him pause to breathe, the silence in the room becoming palpable as the ink begins to dry, catching the low, honeyed light of a single oil lamp. Next to the calligrapher sits the illuminator, whose task it is to clothe these words in a language of brilliant color. He works with pigments that are as rare and precious as the eastern spices traded in the markets below. Look at the deep, resonant blue that he applies to the borders of the page. This is lapis lazuli, a mineral brought from the rugged spines of distant Afghan mountains, ground into a fine powder and mixed with gum arabic. It is a color that seems to contain the very stratosphere of a desert night. Beside it, he lays down thin, shimmering leaves of gold, burnishing them until they reflect the flickering light like a miniature sun. The geometric patterns he creates, the complex stars and interlocking polygons, are not merely decorative. They are a visual representation of the infinite, an enigmatic map of the cosmos, where every line is a testament to the meticulous harmony of the universe. In this scriptorium, you begin to understand the unique linguistic landscape that defined the Mamluk world, a landscape marked by a profound and tantalizing silence. The men of the sword, the Mamluk elite, lived their lives in a linguistic stratosphere that separated them from their subjects. Among themselves, in the barracks and the council chambers, they spoke their ancestral Turkic or Circassian dialects. To the Arabic-speaking Egyptian populace, this was a language of command, a sharp, rhythmic tongue that signaled the presence of power. It was a language that provided a sense of Kushtashiyya, a brotherhood of the owned, and it served as a wall that protected the exclusivity of the ruling class. This linguistic divide was a palpable feature of daily life, an enigmatic barrier that underscored the status of the Mamluks as the true lords of the realm. Yet, as you look at the manuscripts around you, you see that the Mamluks embraced Arabic as the sacred way of their faith and their state. They were the great patrons of Arabic literature, history and law, commissioning vast encyclopedias and meticulous chronicles that documented every detail of their reign. This was the paradox of their identity. They were foreign warriors who became the ultimate guardians of Islamic culture. Their patronage was a testament to their desire for legitimacy, a way to weave their own names into the long ancestral history of the Nile. They used the language of brilliant color in their books to bridge the gap between their nomadic origins and their role as the sovereigns of a great urban empire. Leave the scriptorium now and move through the palace corridors toward the great hall of the emirs. Here, the language of power is expressed through a different kind of visual code, the blazon, or heraldic symbol. Because the Mamluks were a class of former slaves, they lacked the traditional genealogies that defined the nobility of Europe or the aristocracies of the East. To compensate for this unraveling of lineage, they developed a meticulous system of heraldry based on their professional roles within the Sultanate. You see these blazons everywhere, carved into the limestone lintels of doorways, inlaid into the silver of water basins, and embroidered into the heavy silk of their robes. Look closely at the shield of an emir. You might see the image of a cup, signifying his rank as the Sultan's cupbearer, or a pair of polo sticks, marking him as the master of the horse. A sword indicates a sword bearer, while a napkin might represent the master of the robes. These symbols were not merely markers of employment. They were testaments to the emir's proximity to the stratosphere of absolute power. They were the visual language through which these warriors declared their identity and their achievements. In a world where one's past was often a tantalizing silence of slavery, the blazon was a roar of presence, a meticulous claim to status in the hierarchy of the state. The Mamluk obsession with the language of brilliant color extended to the very objects they used in their daily and ceremonial lives. Imagine you are now in the workshop of a master metalworker in the heart of the city. The air is thick with the scent of charcoal and the rhythmic, metallic clatter of hammers. You see a massive brass basin being prepared for a high-ranking official. The artisan is performing the meticulous work of inlaying the surface with silver and gold. He carves delicate grooves into the brass and then hammers in thin wires of precious metal, creating vibrant frescoes of courtly life. You see scenes of the hunt, with riders on horseback, pursuing enigmatic beasts through a forest of stylized scrolls. The silver shines against the dark, patinated brass, creating a visual energy that is both sophisticated and palpable. These metalwork masterpieces, like the famous Baptistère de Saint-Louis, were not just functional items. They were diplomatic gifts and symbols of imperial grandeur. They carried the reputation of the Sultanate across the known world, from the courts of Europe to the palaces of the East. The meticulous detail in these works, the individual feathers on a hawk, the intricate folds of an emir's turban, is a testament to the ponos of the craftsmen who labored in the shadows of the mosques. Their work was an unraveling of raw matter into a stratosphere of refinement, a language of beauty that transcended the brutality of the battlefield. As evening falls, imagine the interior of a great mosque complex, perhaps that of Sultan Barq. The vast space is filled with a tantalizing silence, broken only by the soft, measured tread of a few lingering worshippers. Hanging from the high vaulted ceilings are hundreds of enameled glass lamps, each one a masterpiece of Mamluk art. Look at one closely as a servant reaches up to light the wick. The glass is thin and translucent, decorated with vibrant frescoes of blue, red, and gold enamel. You see the Sultan's blazon and calligraphic inscriptions from the Quran, often in the verse of light. God is the light of the heavens and the earth. When the flame takes hold, the lamp is transformed. It becomes a vessel of divine presence, the light glowing through the enameled patterns and casting long, enigmatic shadows across the meticulous geometric floors. The language of brilliant color on the glass creates a stratosphere of spiritual intensity, making the heavy limestone walls seem to vibrate with life. This was the Mamluk way, to take the most fragile of materials, glass, and turn it into a testament of eternal truth. The glassmakers of Cairo and Aleppo were the undisputed masters of this craft, their techniques so meticulous that they were sought after by merchant oligarchies and kings from far-off lands. Even the textiles of the era spoke a language of status and power. You walk through the royal tirers' workshops, where the air is filled with the rhythmic thrum of hundreds of looms. Here, the finest silks and linens are woven, often embroidered with the name of the Sultan and his titles in a meticulous script. These textiles were the currency of the court, given as robes of honor to loyal emirs or foreign ambassadors. To wear the Sultan's tiraz was to be enveloped in his authority, to become a walking testament to the wealth and reach of the state. The vibrant frescoes of the woven patterns, the parrots, the lions, and the complex arabesques were the visual background of the Mamluk stratosphere, a world where even a piece of cloth was a carefully constructed message of power. As you stand in the fading light of the workshop, you realize that the Mamluks were not just warriors. They were the detectives of an aesthetic that combined the rugged spines of their nomadic heritage with the meticulous refinement of the urban Islamic world. Their art was an unraveling of the boundary between the functional and the sublime. Every object, from the smallest coin to the largest mosque lamp, was part of a language of brilliant color that sought to defy the inherent transience of their rule. They were men who had no ancestral roots in this land, and so they built their own ancestry out of stone, ink, glass, and gold. The tantalizing silence of their origins was answered by the eloquent beauty of their creations. They understood that power, if it is to endure, must be translated into the language of the spirit and the eye. Their meticulously crafted world was a testament to the belief that even the owned can become the authors of a magnificent history. The language they spoke may have been a wall, but the art they patronized was a bridge, an enigmatic connection that still speaks to us through the centuries. As the night continues its measured tread, the light in the scriptorium is finally extinguished. The calligrapher's kalam is laid to rest, and the illuminator's gold leaf is tucked away. The vibrant frescoes of the day fade into the soft velvet dark of the citadel. but the objects they created remain, silent guardians of a stratosphere of excellence that refuse to be forgotten. They are the mirrors of history, reflecting a world where the ponos of the artisan and the vision of the ruler combine to create a legacy that is as palpable today as it was 700 years ago. The air in the citadel is quiet now, carrying only the faint, enigmatic whisper of the desert wind as it brushes against the rugged spines of the limestone walls. The journey through the language and art of the Mamluks has brought us to a place of profound reflection. We have seen how beauty can be forged in the crucible of military rule, and how the language of brilliant color can illuminate the darkest corners of the past. The measured tread of our story is moving toward its conclusion. But before we leave this world, we must consider the final legacy of the slave kings. As the deep velvet night stretches its long fingers across the limestone canyons of Cairo, you find yourself transported away from the spiritual quiet of the mosques and the intellectual stillness of the scriptorium. You are moving now toward the source of the empire's lifeblood, the frantic, wealthy, and enigmatic world of international commerce. Imagine you are standing on the bustling docks of Alexandria, the Mediterranean gateway where the Mamluk Sultanate met the rest of the world. The air here is sharp with the salt of the sea, the smell of damp timber, and the pervasive, heavy aroma of the great spice trade. This is the thalassocracy of the coast, a place where the stratosphere of global power was negotiated through the weight of pepper and the shimmer of silk. The Mamluks were not just warriors. They were the meticulous managers of a global economy. You see a massive Venetian galley, its hull low in the water, pulling alongside the quay. From its depths, sailors and porters are unloading crates of European silver, Florentine wool, and Bohemian glass. But the true treasure, the substance that built the towering minarets of the city, is what flows in the opposite direction. You watch as meticulously packed bales are hoisted onto the ships. Ginger from the Malabar coast, cinnamon from Ceylon, and, most importantly, the black gold of the medieval world, pepper. The scent of these spices is palpable, a thick, intoxicating cloud that represents the very essence of Mamluk wealth. In the shadows of the customs house, you observe the Karimi merchants. These were the merchant oligarchies, the elite financiers who controlled the long-distance trade routes across the Indian Ocean and the Red Sea. They were the men of the ledger, whose power was as significant as the men of the sword. Imagine their appearance. They are dressed in heavy, expensive robes of Syrian silk, their fingers adorned with enigmatic rings of carnelian and turquoise. They move with a measured tread, their faces masks of meticulous calculation as they oversee the unraveling of vast fortunes. The Karimi were more than just traders. They were the bankers of the Sultanate, lending the gold that funded the armies and the monumental constructions of the state. The wealth they generated was the foundation of the Mamluk stratosphere. To understand this, you must imagine the journey of a single grain of pepper. It began in the humid forests of India, was carried across the churning turquoise waters of the Indian Ocean in a wooden dhow, and arrived at the Red Sea port of Aidab. From there, it was loaded onto camels for a grueling, meticulous trek across the desert to the Nile. This was the ponos of the caravan, a monotonous grinding toil through the heat and sand, protected by Mamluk patrols. Finally, it arrived in the markets of Cairo and Alexandria, where its price was meticulously marked up to fund the luxury of the court. The Mamluks held the keys to this sacred way of trade, and they guarded it with the same ferocity they showed on the battlefield. Move your mind now, from the docks to the Diwan al-Insha, the chancery of the Sultan. This was the nerve center of Mamluk diplomacy, a world of enigmatic protocols and sophisticated vocabulary. Here, the men of the pen drafted letters to the kings of France, the emperors of Byzantium, and the khans of the Golden Horde. You see a scribe meticulously sharpening his reed pen, preparing to write a message on a scroll of fine Egyptian paper. This was the global chessboard, where the Mamluks played a high-stakes game of alliances and rivalries. The most critical and enigmatic of these relationships was with the Mongol Ilkhanate of Persia. For decades, the Mamluks and the Mongols were locked in a struggle for the heart of the Middle East. Yet, while they fought on the plains of Syria, they also engaged in a meticulous dance of diplomacy. You might witness the arrival of a Mongol embassy at the Citadel. They bring gifts that are a testament to the reach of their empire. Horses from the steppes, fine Chinese porcelains, and perhaps a captive lion or a hunting leopard. The reception of these envoys was a carefully staged spectacle, designed to impress the visitors with the stratosphere of Mamluk power. The Mamluks also maintained a vital, ancestral connection with the Golden Horde, the Mongol state in Russia. This was not just a political alliance, it was the primary source of their new recruits. The Golden Horde provided the steady stream of young Kipchak Turkic boys, who were the raw material of the Mamluk system. You see the diplomatic envoys moving between Cairo and the Volga, carrying not just letters, but the very future of the Sultanate. The unraveling of this trade in the later centuries would be one of the factors leading to the empire's decline, but for now, it is a meticulously managed pipeline of power. Consider the gifts that the Sultan would send in return. A Mamluk embassy to a foreign court was a language of brilliant color and unimaginable luxury. They would send enameled glass lamps, meticulously inlaid metal basins, and exotic animals. There is a famous testament in the chronicles of a giraffe sent by the Sultan to the court of the Emperor of China, a sight so enigmatic that it caused a sensation in the Far East. These gifts were not just tokens of friendship. They were a declaration of the Mamluk stratosphere, a way of proving that the slave kings were the true equals of any sovereign on earth. Governance in this world was deeply tied to the management of these external connections. The Sultan had to balance the interests of the merchant oligarchies with the needs of his military elite. He was the overseer of the markets, the protector of the pilgrims on the sacred way to Mecca, and the arbiter of international disputes. The administration was a labyrinthine system of diwans, or departments, each one meticulously tracking the flow of wealth and the movement of people. The men of the pen were the detectives of history, keeping records that allowed the Sultan to maintain his grip on a sprawling and diverse empire. But this wealth and power came with a palpable tension. The merchant oligarchies, while essential to the state, were often viewed with suspicion by the military class. The emirs saw themselves as the defenders of the faith and the state, while the merchants were seen as pursuers of profit. Yet, the two were inseparably linked. The gold of the Karimi paid for the armor of the Mamluk, and the sword of the Mamluk protected the trade of the Karimi. This was the anatomy of the world at the height of the Middle Ages, a delicate, meticulous balance between commerce and conquest. Imagine you are walking through a wikala in Cairo, one of the massive merchant inns and warehouses that line the city's streets. These structures were monumental in their own right, with high stone walls and central courtyards, where the atmosphere was thick with the dust of the road and the noise of 100 different languages. You see the vaulted storage rooms, or khans, filled to the ceiling with the wealth of 3 continents. There are bags of aromatic resins, chests of fine pearls from the Persian Gulf, and bolts of dyed wool from the looms of Flanders. The wikala was a stratosphere of the mundane and the magnificent, a place where the ponos of the merchant was rewarded with the treasure of the world. In this environment, the language of brilliant color was found in the diversity of the goods and the people. You see a Genoese merchant arguing over the price of a loom, a scholar from Timbuktu discussing the latest philosophical treatise from Baghdad, and a Mamluk emir inspecting a shipment of fine Damascus blades. This was the true strength of the Sultanate, its ability to act as the central hub of the world's web. The Mamluks provided the security and the infrastructure that allowed this global exchange to thrive. Their rule was a testament to the idea that a state built on the labor of the dispossessed could become the most sophisticated and wealthy power of its age. However, the meticulous nature of this system also made it vulnerable to the unraveling of global shifts. The Mamluk thalassocracy was dependent on the stability of the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean. Any disruption, whether from a sudden shift in the monsoon winds or the arrival of a new, enigmatic power like the Portuguese, could have unforeseen consequences for the entire state. The stratosphere of wealth was built on a foundation that was as fragile as the glass lamps that lit the mosques. The Mamluks were the masters of their world, but they were also its prisoners, bound by the very trade routes that made them great. As the night deepens, you reflect on the palpable weight of this history. The global chessboard was a place of immense beauty and immense cruelty. The ponos of the enslaved boy in the Black Sea and the ponos of the peasant in the Delta were the invisible forces that moved the pieces. The Mamluk Sultanate was a mirror of the medieval world, reflecting both its highest aspirations and its most profound contradictions. The legacy of their trade and diplomacy is still visible in the architecture of Cairo and the ancestral memories of the regions they once ruled. The silence of the docks in Alexandria is broken only by the rhythmic lapping of the water against the stone. The great galleys and dhows are quiet, their sails furled like the wings of a sleeping bird. The merchants have retreated to their homes, and the diplomats are asleep in their palaces. The measured tread of history continues, a constant flow that moves beyond the rise and fall of dynasties. You have seen the wealth of the Mamluks, and you have felt the enigmatic power of their global reach. The air is cool now, carrying the scent of the sea and the desert. The sacred way of commerce is a path through time, leading us from the riches of the past to the reflections of the present. Stay with me in this tantalizing silence. The story of the Mamluks is reaching its final movements. We have seen their glory, their art, and their wealth. Now, we must turn our gaze to the most enduring part of their story, the legacy they left behind, and the mirror they hold up to our own world. The Mamluk gold dinar, with its meticulous inscriptions, was the most trusted currency of the Mediterranean. It was a testament to the stability they provided and the wealth they commanded. Like the coin itself, their history is a precious object, worn by time, but still shining with the light of 1,000 stories. The measured tread of our narrative is moving toward the morning light, but the shadows of the Mamluk night still have secrets to reveal. The stratosphere of their world is fading into the dawn, but the stones they laid and the paths they forged remain as a testament to their enigmatic journey. As the long, measured tread of the Mamluk night continues, we leave behind the clatter of the docks and the sharp, metallic air of the citadel to enter a realm of profound and tantalizing silence. You are walking now through the narrow, winding lanes that branch off the sacred way, moving toward the soft, amber glow of a khanqa, a Sufi hospice. The atmosphere here is palpable, thick with the heavy, sweet scent of burning agar wood and the dry, ancient smell of stone that has absorbed centuries of prayer. In the Mamluk world, the stratosphere of power was always balanced by a stratosphere of the spirit. The men of the sword, who lived by the blade, sought a meticulous connection to the divine through the men of the soul. You step over the threshold of the khanqa of Baybars al-Jashnakir. The courtyard is a masterpiece of ablak masonry, the alternating rows of black and white stone creating a rhythmic, optical energy that seems to pulse in time with the quiet chanting coming from the main hall. Here, you witness a different kind of ponos, the sacred suffering of the ascetic. You see the Sufi dervishes gathered in a circle, their movements slow and deliberate. This is the dhikr, the ritual of remembrance. As they begin to sway, their voices rising in a low, hypnotic rumble, the boundaries of the physical world begin an enigmatic unraveling. For the Mamluk elite, who were often the primary patrons of these hospices. Sufism offered a sanctuary from the brutal grace of political life. They saw in the dervish a mirror of their own journey, a soul that had been stripped of its worldly ties and reforged in the fire of devotion. The meticulous carvings on the walls of the Kanka, the intricate floral patterns, and the flowing Arabic calligraphy serve as a testament to this spiritual patronage. You see an emir sitting in the shadows, his heavy silk robes a sharp contrast to the simple wool of the Sufis. He has come here to seek solace, to find a sacred way through the unraveling chaos of the court. The air is cool and still, but the intensity of the devotion is a palpable force, a stratosphere of faith that provides an anchor in a world of constant change. Moving further into the heart of the city, you find yourself before the massive, towering gates of a madrasa at the hour of the dawn prayer. If the Kanka was the home of the heart, the madrasa was the home of the mind. Here, the ponos was the monotonous grinding toil of the scholar. You see the young students, their eyes weary but focused, sitting on goatskin rugs in the great iwans. They are engaged in the meticulous study of the Quran, the Hadith, and the complex labyrinths of Islamic law. The air is scented with the sharp, acidic smell of fresh ink and the dry, dusty aroma of sun-bleached parchment. The life of the scholar, the alim, was a testament to the power of the word. They were the detectives of history and divinity, unraveling the complexities of the sacred texts to provide a moral framework for the Sultanate. Their labor was as rigorous as the training in the barracks. To master the language of the divine, one had to undergo years of sacred suffering, memorizing thousands of lines of poetry and legal precedent. You watch a teacher as he speaks to his students, his voice a measured tread of wisdom. He is explaining a fine point of grammar or a subtle distinction in the law, his movements meticulous and precise. This was the intellectual stratosphere of Cairo, a city that had become the greatest center of learning in the Islamic world after the fall of Baghdad. The Mamluks understood that their rule required more than just the sword. It required the legitimacy provided by these scholars. The Sultan would often visit the madrasa, sitting on the floor in a display of meticulous humility to listen to a lecture. This was the symbiosis of the Mamluk world. The men of the pen provided the spiritual and legal testament for the state, while the men of the sword provided the security and the thalassocracy that allowed the scholars to work. It was a world of vibrant frescoes of thought, where the tantalizing silence of the library was as important as the roar of the stadium. Yet, the spiritual landscape of the Mamluk world was not limited to the mosques and the madrasas. As you walk through the Coptic quarter, the atmosphere changes once again. Here, you hear the enigmatic, rhythmic clanging of bells and the haunting ancestral chants of the Christian liturgy. The Coptic Christians and the Jewish communities were integral threads in the social tapestry of the Sultanate, existing as dhimmi, or protected peoples. Their lives were a testament to the enduring diversity of the Nile Valley. You see the meticulous woodwork of a Coptic screen, the intricate patterns of ebony and ivory, creating a language of brilliant color in the dim light of the church. The air is thick with the scent of frankincense and the metallic smell of ancient icons. The Copts were often the master bureaucrats of the state, the men who managed the complex, unraveling details of the land taxes and the irrigation systems. Their ponos was the labor of the ledger and the pen, a sacred suffering of service that kept the machinery of the empire running. While they lived in a different religious stratosphere, their contribution to the anatomy of the world was palpable. In the Jewish quarters, near the ancient Ben Ezra synagogue, you witnessed the vibrant life of a community that had been part of Cairo for centuries. Here, the detectives of history have found a treasure trove of documents known as the Geniza, an unraveling of the everyday lives of merchants, scholars, and families. You see the meticulous records of trade, the enigmatic letters sent across the Mediterranean, and the testament of a people who maintain their ancestral traditions in the heart of a great Islamic capital. The language of their world was a blend of Arabic and Hebrew, a tantalizing silence that has only recently been broken by modern scholars. The relationship between the Mamluk state and its religious minorities was often a delicate balancing act. There were periods of profound cooperation and moments of palpable tension, often driven by the unforeseen consequences of external wars or internal economic crises. Yet, the city of Cairo remained a mirror of the medieval world's complexity, a place where different faiths lived in a meticulous, if sometimes strained, proximity. The sacred way of the city was large enough to hold the mosque, the church, and the synagogue, each contributing to the vibrant frescoes of urban life. As the night moves toward the first light of dawn, you imagine the grandest spiritual event of the Mamluk year, the departure of the Hajj caravan. This was the ultimate sacred way, a journey that connected the stratosphere of Cairo with the holy cities of Mecca and Medina. Imagine the scene at the Bab al-Nasr gate. The air is electric with excitement and the palpable scent of thousands of camels. You see the mamal, the ceremonial palanquin covered in heavy dark green silk and embroidered with meticulous gold calligraphy. This was the empty throne of the Sultan, a testament to his role as the protector of the holy places. The caravan moves with a measured tread, a river of humanity flowing through the rugged spines of the desert. For the pilgrims, this was a journey of sacred suffering and profound transformation. They faced the heat of the Sahara and the threat of raiding Bedouin tribes, their ponos a physical manifestation of their faith. The Mamluks provided the military escort, a stratosphere of protection that ensured the safety of the pilgrims. The Hajj was the great unraveling of social boundaries. The Sultan's emir and the humble weaver from the Suku walked the same dusty path, their ancestral differences forgotten in the shadow of the Kaaba. The Sultanate's control over the Hajj was a pillar of its legitimacy. By providing the kiswa, the sacred cloth that draped the Kaaba, the Mamluks declared their status as the preeminent power in the Islamic world. This was the thalassocracy of the spirit, a control over the most important religious route in the world. As you watch the caravan disappear into the enigmatic haze of the desert, you realize that the Mamluk world was held together by these threads of faith and ritual. The meticulous order of the court and the brutal grace of the military were all directed toward this higher purpose. The spiritual landscape was also marked by the vibrant frescoes of the Mawlids, the festivals of the saints. Imagine the streets of Cairo lit by thousands of oil lamps, the air filled with the scent of halwa and the sound of music. These were moments of communal joy that broke the monotonous grinding toil of daily life. The people would gather around the tombs of the great saints, their voices joined in a testament of shared belief. These festivals were the enigmatic glue that bound the different layers of society together, a stratosphere of celebration where the ponos of the day was replaced by the ecstasy of the night. As you linger in the quiet of the early morning, the call to prayer begins to ripple across the city. It starts as a single, enigmatic voice from the heights of a minaret and is soon joined by 1,000 others, creating a soundscape that is palpable with the ancestral weight of the faith. This is the heartbeat of the Mamluk world, a measured tread of time that has not changed for centuries. You have seen the sacred suffering of the Sufi, the meticulous labor of the scholar, and the enduring faith of the minorities. You have walked the sacred way of the Hajj and felt the vibrant frescoes of the Mawlid. The Mamluk Sultanate was more than just a military regime. It was a stratosphere of the soul. Its stones were laid in prayer, its laws were written in ink and blood, and its legacy is a testament to the human search for the divine. The unraveling of the night is almost complete, and the rugged spines of the Mokattam Hills are beginning to catch the first grey light of the morning. The tantalizing silence of the spirit remains, a lingering shadow that invites us to reflect on the nature of faith and power. You have traveled through the heart of a civilization that turned its chains into a crown and its labor into a masterpiece. The anatomy of their world was a complex, tiered stratosphere of strength and delicacy, a language of brilliant color that still speaks to us from the ruins. As we move toward the final chapter of our journey, let the peace of the Kanka and the wisdom of the Madrasa linger in your thoughts. The measured tread of history is leading us home, back to the mirror of our own world, where the ancestral echoes of the Mamluk still reside. The air is cool and fresh now, the scent of the desert wind carrying the promise of the dawn. The sacred way is silent, waiting for the first movements of the day. The ponos of the ancestors is a legacy we carry with us, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of the enigmatic movements of time. Settle into this moment of profound reflection as we prepare to see how the story of the slave kings finally ends and where it begins anew in the mirror of history. The long, measured tread of our journey has brought us at last to the threshold of the morning, where the ink-black shadows of the medieval night begin to dissolve into the soft, pearlescent grey of the modern world. As you stand one final time upon the limestone ramparts of the Citadel, the city of Cairo below you is no longer the flickering ocean of torchlight it once was. Instead, it is a sprawling, humming megalopolis of 20 million souls, a place where the roar of traffic and the glow of neon have replaced the rhythmic breathing of the desert. Yet, if you look closely, if you become a detective of history in the quiet of this hour, you will see that the Mamluk Sultanate is not a ghost of the past. It is a living, palpable presence, an ancestral foundation upon which the modern world continues to build. There is a common misconception in the unraveling of history that empires simply vanish, snuffed out like a candle in a sudden draught. But the Mamluks defy this narrative of extinction. Their story is one of transformation, a meticulous adaptation that allowed their influence to permeate the centuries, long after the Ottoman cannons silenced their sovereignty. After the disaster at Raidaniya in 1517, the Mamluks did not disappear into the rugged spines of the mountains. Instead, they became a vital, enigmatic component of the Ottoman administration. They were the people of the house, a land-owning elite that maintained their Kushta Shia bonds and their martial pride under the shadow of a new stratosphere of power. For nearly 300 years after their formal fall, the Mamluks continued to govern the provinces, manage the irrigation of the Nile, and command the respect of the local populace. They remained a stratosphere of wealth and tradition, a mirror of their former glory that only truly shattered in the early 19th century. Imagine you are back in the citadel in the year 1811. The air is thick with the scent of coffee and the palpable tension of a changing era. Muhammad Ali Pasha, the ambitious ruler of a modernizing Egypt, has invited the Mamluk leadership to a grand banquet. It is a scene of vibrant frescoes and meticulous courtesy, a final display of the ceremonial culture that defined their rule. As the Mamluk emirs, dressed in their finest silks and mounted on their magnificent horses, attempt to leave the citadel through the narrow, steep passage of the Bab al-Azab, the gates are suddenly slammed shut. In a brutal, final unraveling of their political existence, the Pasha's soldiers opened fire from the walls above. This was the end of the Mamluk class, a testament to the fact that the old ways of the horse and the sword could no longer survive in a world of modern infantry and centralized state power. Yet even this violent conclusion could not erase the stone testament they left behind. Today, the heart of historic Cairo is recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, a meticulous preservation of the Mamluk stratosphere. When you walk through the Sultan Hassan complex or stand beneath the towering minarets of Al Muizz Street, you are not just looking at old buildings. You are looking at a language of brilliant color that has survived the centuries. These monuments are the mirror of history, reflecting the aspirations of a class that sought immortality through architecture. The UNESCO designation is a global recognition that the Mamluk aesthetic is part of the collective ancestral memory of humanity, a treasure that belongs to the world as much as it belongs to the Nile. Consider the fort of Qaitbay in Alexandria, rising like a limestone crown from the turquoise waters of the Mediterranean. It stands on the exact site of the ancient Pharos lighthouse, built with the very same stones that once guided the ships of the Ptolemies. This is the ultimate symbol of Mamluk transformation. They took the ruins of the classical world and repurposed them into a fortress of the faith, a thalassocracy of the coast that guarded the sacred way for generations. The fort is a testament to their resilience, a structure that has weathered earthquakes, wars, and the relentless salt of the sea to remain a palpable landmark of the Egyptian horizon. The Mamluk Sultanate serves as a mirror of our own world in ways that are both profound and enigmatic. Their society was a meritocracy of the dispossessed, a stratosphere of power where one's origin mattered less than one's skill, loyalty, and capacity for ponos. In an era where we grapple with questions of social mobility and the definition of leadership, the Mamluk model offers a startlingly modern perspective. They were the architects of their own destiny, proving that the status of one who is owned could be unraveled and rewoven into the status of a true lord. Their lives were a testament to the belief that identity is not a fixed point, but a meticulous construction of will and spirit. Furthermore, the Mamluk era forces us to reflect on the sustainability of our own global systems. Like us, they lived at the center of a complex web of international trade, a thalassocracy of commerce that brought them unimaginable wealth, but also made them vulnerable to the shifting tides of technology and environmental change. The perfect storm that undid them, the convergence of plague, the shift in trade routes, and the arrival of gunpowder, is a mirror of the challenges we face in our own interconnected age. Their history is a meditation on the fragility of greatness and the importance of adaptation. They remind us that the unraveling of an empire is often the result of unforeseen consequences, and that the meticulous preservation of the past is our only defense against the amnesia of the future. As the dawn finally begins to break over the Mokattam Hills, the rugged spines of the landscape are illuminated in a soft golden light. The air is cool, fresh, and carries the ancestral promise of a new day. You have traveled a long way tonight, through the dust of the stadium, the silence of the scriptorium, and the vibrant frescoes of the palace. You have felt the weight of the limestone and the scent of the eastern spices. The story of the slave kings of Cairo is now part of you, a thread of history that you carry back into the quiet of your own room. The ponos of the day is over. The stratosphere of the world is quiet. The bustling markets are still. The great galleys are at rest, and the tantalizing silence of the past is now a comforting presence. Imagine the stars over the citadel, the same stars that Baybars and Kalawun watched as they planned their empires. The scent of eastern spices is now a warm, comforting presence in your mind. The rugged spines of the mountains are the guardians of your rest. You are safe in the labyrinthine history of the ancestors, tucked away from the frantic pace of the modern age. Thank you for joining me on this long, meticulous journey into the past. We have walked through the dust of the stadium and the gilded halls of power. We have witnessed the unraveling of empires and the testament of stone. I hope the stories of the slave kings have brought you a sense of perspective and a deep, ancestral calm in the quiet of the night. Their history is our mirror, and their legacy is our sanctuary. In the ruins and the monuments, we find the reflection of our own striving, our own resilience, and our own search for meaning in the measured tread of time. The sacred way is silent now. The measured tread of the Nile continues its eternal journey toward the sea, a silver ribbon of continuity in an ever-changing world. The black stones of the mosques are cool to the touch, and the vibrant frescoes of your mind are softening into the gentle muted colors of sleep. You have traveled far, crossing continents and centuries, and it is time to rest in the shadow of the minarets. Let the history of the Mamluks be the gentle stratosphere that carries you away from the worries of the present. I wish you a calm and peaceful night. May your dreams be filled with the language of brilliant color and the meticulous peace of the ancestors. Settle into the darkness, feel the weight of your blankets, and let the rhythmic breathing of history lull you into a deep, restorative slumber. The story is told, the journey is complete, and the ancestors are watching over you.